This is not a show for the Marcus Smart haters. Plus, what is wrong with Jayson Tatum? Going to talk about it with Tom Westerholm of Boston.com right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
I'm so hyped right now. Anything's possible. I'm my mother. I'm my lady, ma. Anything's possible.
Yeah. Rain and Jay's back with the vengeance. Back. All the real Celtics fans in attendance. This the truth like 34. This like walking in the garden when you hear the roars. The crowd goes crazy. Most in-depth coverage on the daily. Mainly podcast royalty, the content kings. When you talking about the franchise with 17 rings. Focus like Danny at the deadline. Global, but it got a local feel like the red line, the blue line, the green line. Play it in between time. I'ma throw my C's jersey on in the meantime and press play. When the F's done, I can't wait until the next day. Trying to stay in tune with the C's, that's the best way. Melly.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast. Thank you for making the show part of your daily routine, and thank you for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Locked On Celtics is free, it's daily, it's available wherever podcasts exist, and it's on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribing there. Today's episode is brought to you by Calm. For a limited time, our listeners can join LeBron James in using Calm and get a 40% discount off a premium subscription. Go to calm.com/LockedOnNBA. Getting into the Celtics here with Tom Westerholm of the Geno Time podcast and Boston.com, talking Marcus Smart, talking Jayson Tatum, and digging into why Marcus Smart is his on-off numbers are great. And this is not a show if you're a Marcus Smart hater. This is not the show for you. And later on, Jayson Tatum, things that he can do, why he needs to be more aggressive. I talked a little bit about it yesterday, but now let me talk about it some more with Tom Westerholm. All right, Tom, thank you for hopping on after spreading all your propaganda across Twitter, using stats to actually illustrate points. How dare you?
Look, I followed up with this, so if you follow me on Twitter, this is not going to be like an original take, but I want people to remember that I'm an idiot and I don't understand like basic – I mean, I barely understand basic math. I definitely don't understand advanced math. So – I had one. I mean, I did the thing that like all of us do, where like one person disagrees with you in your comments, and then you tweet about it several times.
Of course.
But one guy was like, "Well, there's all these stats that are showing. Like, I don't, all I'm seeing is stats, nothing concrete." Right. I was like, the thing to remember about me is if I tweet out a stat, you can understand it too, because I'm not like I'm not firing it on all cylinders when it comes to math.
To catch people up here, Tom's tweet. And you see, if you're watching on YouTube, it's at Tom_NBA. Tom's tweet was, the Celtics have a new leader in on-off differential per cleaning the glass, Marcus Smart. The Celtics have outscored opponents in non-garbage time minutes by 15.8 points per 100 possessions with Smart on the floor. It's very basic. With Smart on the floor, with a number that's leveled out, the per 100 possessions is meant to even things out so we can all kind of process it and not say, oh, it's a lot because this guy plays a lot or whatever. So 15.8 points per 100 possessions when Smart is on the floor. It seems like a basic stat to me, Tom. When Smart is on the floor, the Celtics are outscoring their opponents. And that's the number that they're outscoring them by right now. So I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, no, that's it.
And I'll throw into this. As Sean Grandy last night after the game, this seems to be like the Marcus Smart hater, like everybody, all you Marcus Smart haters just kind of like look to the side. I have one guy, by the way, that's a Marcus Smart hater that always comments when Smart does something wrong, leaves like 5 or 6 comments under the YouTube videos. Last night, nowhere to be found. So Sean's tweet is, Marcus Smart leads the Celtics in steals and is second in the NBA and plus minus second in net rating, and when he's off the court, Boston has the worst offense in the NBA, 0.95 points per possession, which is just kind of ridiculous. So let's dive into this. Let's dive into why Marcus Smart is making a positive impact and why people just can't let certain things go. What you just wrote a piece. Well, you just tweeted out the stat. What's your take on Marcus Smart in his start to the season?
So I think it's easy to see why there was the open season on Marcus Smart, right? Like there were some, I mean, you and I talked about it. Like there were some very like reasonable kind of takes about like, hey, he's got to be smarter about X, Y, and Z. Like, obviously there was, all the stuff that happened in the Dallas game. I mean, and I think a lot was made out of that, especially because of his comments about Jaylen and Jayson, which, I mean, I think you could probably say that they weren't that productive necessarily. I mean, like that seems to be kind of the agreed upon, Celtics management, Jaylen and Jayson, like nobody seems to be like, man, I'm really glad Marcus Smart called us out. On the other hand, like it's hard to argue with the results that he's putting forward. Statistically, like you said, I mean, these are like the Celtics are just significantly better when he's on the floor. And I think from a schematic perspective, I mean, it comes down to a bunch of things. Obviously, he's not like offering like a ton of floor spacing or anything like that, but he is very reliable as, a pick and roll ball handler, as a passer. I think he threw one of the best passes I think it was to Al Horford.
Behind the back thing?
Yeah, that thing. That was one of the best passes I've seen a Celtic throw since Rondo, right? Like that was a ridiculous pass. So I mean, his ball movement matters. Obviously his defense matters, and I think too, not for nothing, his steals matter because steals are a proven statistic that like really affects the offensive end as well. If you get a steal, you're starting a fast break, and usually anyway. And transition offense is like a really good. I mean, that's one of the higher points per possession types of offense. So I think all of those things matter quite a bit, and especially with some of these stats, a few possessions here and there can make a huge difference in one game, right? Like one game is a small sample size. So if you start stacking good small sample sizes together, you get a bigger sample size and you get Marcus Smart having a pretty solid start here. And I think, all of that kind of works together, right? The passing, the steals, and just obviously the defense. Like obviously he brings that as well. So, I mean, he's complicated to evaluate. There isn't kind of that one, okay, Smart is shooting X number from the field and that's helping the Celtics this way. Like there isn't that one thing with him. And I think that's one of the reasons why, he might not always be popular because he's complicated. But I mean, he is a good player. Like at this point, I don't know what else to tell people. Like he's a good basketball player. Whether he fits you or not, I understand, but he's good.
This is just it's bordering on political with Marcus Smart, like political level dissertation here, where if you look at Marcus Smart and you say, hey, I'm cool with Marcus Smart, then you say, all right, look, he's shooting. I'm pulling up his stats now. He's shooting 25%, 35% from the field now, 27.5% from three, which are both like career lows.
Yep.
Or actually, he had one season that's a little bit worse. But this level of poor shooting people see it. It's very, very obvious that it's happening. And so what we hang our hats on is a little more nuance. Although, look, he had a couple of steals. They lead out to Jayson Tatum fast break dunks against the Cavaliers. That's also pretty obvious. But, we're looking at different things that he's doing. I'm looking at him directing the traffic and getting guys into position and pre-switching, scram switching, that type of stuff. And the detractors are saying, well, look, you want stats, Tom? I'll give you stats. 35% shooting. There's a stat for you. And it's hard to argue.
That. Look, I mean, he's bad. Like he's been bad at shooting.
Yeah. But at the same time, like against Cleveland, he in the first game, I thought he played in the loss. I thought he played great until like the final few minutes when things fell apart for everybody. He had a couple of bad plays, but he was 0 for 5. And, my friend, the anti-smart commenter on YouTube was like, I can't believe you were 0 for 5 and you think you had a great game, blah, blah, blah. Like he actually, okay, but he only took 5 shots. Like that, he's going to have to take some shots sometime, right? Like you can't just be like, Marcus, don't shoot at all, because then they're going to figure out he's not going to shoot. He can still hit open shots. He's not the only guy who's struggling. So I understand especially the first part of the season where everybody was struggling. Marcus was certainly a part of that. But I think part of this 7-game stretch where they're 5-2 and their defense is the top in the league and all of that, I also think Marcus Smart should get credit for being a part of that. And, look, his assist numbers working backwards, 5, 8, 6, 6, 6. I mean, that's, 5 straight games with 5 or more assists. And, and that's important stuff for him. Steals 2, 5, 3, 3. Like he's just going off. I don't know. I think that we need to, the people who are anti-smart, I think they just need to be like, all right, look, just dial it back because he's an important part of this.
And I think it goes not to, you mentioned it being political, not to go like real both sides here. I think it's fair to say that like, yeah, it would be helpful if he shot better, right? Like, I mean, obviously, yes, like the boost that Dennis Schroeder is giving this team, even while he's turning the ball over like crazy and not playing great defense, the boost that he's giving them from his offense is really significant. And I mean, just like imagine if that was Marcus Smart instead, right? Like, yeah, like that would be unbelievable. So I think I understand that. I think to your point about him needing to shoot, it like I sometimes wonder if the Smart detractors just want him to be Tony Allen. And I think the problem is that he is much better and more impactful on the offensive end than Tony Allen, right? Like he's just too good to be that guy. And sometimes that's going to mean that he needs to shoot. And even if those shots aren't great shots, the fact that he's better than Tony Allen and he needs to be more involved in the offense than Tony Allen means that he kind of needs to take them, if that makes sense. So I mean, he's a conundrum. He's a really interesting player, but it is like, I do think that it's important to kind of take both sides in context. Like the detractors really need to see that he is a good player and he does really positively impact this team. And I think those of us who see that, it is important for us to also acknowledge the real flaws, right? Like like his shooting, it like, man, imagine if he was a better shooter, how much better that would be for the Celtics. Like those things are also true.
Going to come back with more from Tom and our discussion on Jayson Tatum. First, I'm going to talk to you about Calm. When it comes to athletes, we tend to focus on physical fitness, but there's another side to the game that's more important, mental fitness. Calm is the #1 app for sleep and meditation and has teamed up with LeBron James to help you train your mind and become the champion version of yourself. LeBron and Calm know that your mind is like any other muscle in your body, but you don't have to be a world champ to learn how to train it. Calm can help you train your mind so you sleep better, reduce your stress, and perform at your best. Sleep is a very critical part for everybody. No matter how hard you work, no matter what you do physically, if you're not sleeping, you're wasting your work. As LeBron says, quote, getting good sleep and finding time to rest is one of the most valuable things I can do for my body and mind. From the sound of rain falling on leaves to bedtime sleep stories, Calm puts me to sleep within minutes, which is why I wake up ready for any challenge. So head to calm.com/LockedOnNBA. For a limited time, you'll get 40% off a Calm premium subscription. With Calm, you have access to the nature scenes LeBron loves, like rain on leaves, and so much more, like sleep stories, meditations, so you can be ready for any challenges life throws your way. For a limited time, listeners can join LeBron in using Calm and get a 40% discount on a Calm premium subscription at calm.com/LockedOnNBA. Unlock content to help you focus, ease stress, and sleep better. Get started at calm.com/LockedOnNBA. That's calm.com/LockedOnNBA. Today's show also brought to you by Built Bar. It is the best tasting protein bar on the market, and it tastes so good, you can bring it to Thanksgiving and have it for dessert. Bring some, share it, spread it around, family and friends, so they know the benefits of Built Bars. You're generally going to get 130 to 150 calories. They're low calorie, low carb, low fat, high protein. You have plenty of options for people with nut allergies. If you're on a keto diet, it works. Skip those slices of pie that can be 300 calories or more. These have low sugar, plenty of protein, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. So no matter what types of flavors you like, there's an option at built.com. Plus, there are new surprises all month with limited flavors dropping at built.com regularly. So make sure you're checking the site often. And of course, there's the Built Bar Black Friday. It will be a huge event with all sorts of surprises. So go to built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15. It works every single time. It's not limited to once. You'll get 15% off your order. Promo code is LOCKED15 for 15% off every time at built.com. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Make your second listen every day, the Locked On NBA podcast. This is the Wednesday Locked On Celtics. After I'm done with this, I'll be watching the Warriors-Nets game and the rest of the NBA slate, breaking it down with Jake Madison on Locked On NBA. So make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcast, and it'll be on YouTube. Now, back to my conversation with Tom Westerholm, getting into Jayson Tatum. Just expanding this out, like, yes, the end of game stuff has been the big story here. And anytime Marcus makes a mistake, it's magnified. And like, we go back to the Dallas game where I was like, okay, that foul on Luka was a dumb foul.
Right.
But also, all it cost the Celtics was a chance to answer whatever Luka was going to do. He still hadn't hit that shot. We still don't know what that situation was going to be. And so, yes, it cost the Celtics, but it didn't cost them the game. Luka still had to hit that shot. So I think there's the vitriol goes over the top, but it's also part of a bigger picture here where the Celtics, it feels like they haven't been finishing strong necessarily. But I was pouring through, I was trying to go through some of the clutch stats because I'm like, oh, the clutch stats probably tell us something. But the Celtics, the eye test tells us like they're not offensive rebounding. They're not great at or they're not great at preventing offensive rebounds.
Yeah,
they're not great at getting free throws, but their defensive rating. You want to take a stab at what the clutch defensive rating for the Celtics is?
I don't. Oh man, I don't know what the defensive rating is going to be. I can tell you where they rank in net rating if that counts. But defensive rating, I'll say
in the clutch.
In the clutch, yeah. No, I'll say 90, like 98.
It's not actually not bad. It's 95.7.
Okay, yeah.
And their net rating is a 10 plus 10.
Yeah.
And their offense, I mean, look, their offense is middle of the pack, but their defense is good. Their offense is middle of the pack. All the things that are happening throughout the course of the season are carrying over in the clutch. I think we're hyper focused on the two collapses, but the Celtics aren't any worse necessarily, I think, in the clutch. They're making some very visible mistakes.
Yeah.
And I think the carryover from last year makes it feel worse. But when you look at the clutch statistics, it's like, oh, the numbers don't match how bad people feel about it.
I think I agreed. I think the big issue that's happening right now is like it's tied to everything that's going on with the Celtics, and it's just that Jayson Tatum has been bad. Because if you look at Jayson Tatum's clutch numbers, they're really bad. Like he is like if you look at the last 3 minutes, crunch time games, he's shooting like 31%. Like his pretty bad, but like somewhere in that range, like in the 30s. And it's not good, but it's basically lines up with the rest of his season. I mean, his usage is through the roof, like it has been the rest of the season. It's like 34% or something like that. And then if you look at the last minute, he's shooting like 12%. Like it is really, really tough. Yeah. And the thing is that so much of the Celtics late game offense is hand the ball to Jayson Tatum. And I know people complain about that a lot, and I understand why they do. But the fact of the matter is that like Tatum is supposed to be this team's best player. I am sure that like it's more comfortable for the other guys on the team to just kind of give him the ball and let him work. Like, I mean, those are high pressure situations, and that's, Tatum is trying to, like work his way through them as well. So I think like so much else, like with this Celtic season, especially with the struggles, it just comes down to Jayson Tatum has not been Jayson Tatum. And when Jayson Tatum starts being Jayson Tatum again, things might work themselves out. I just think that's, it's so much of what's going on is those things. It's that simple. And it sounds very simplistic, but yeah, Tatum has to be better. And if he is better, I think the Celtics will be better.
Yeah, I'm kind of clicking through some of Tatum's like you said, the last 1 minute. Wow. His offensive rating is 75.9.
Yeah. I believe his net rating in like the last minute is like -27.
No. It's negative 34.5.
Oh, okay.
Which is Dennis Schroeder's is worse. In fact, everybody's is horrible. Like Robert Williams is at -87.5 as so no one in the last minute. Okay, so the last minute of these the clutch numbers, and this is where you drill it down a little bit. the clutch numbers in the last minute have been disgustingly bad.
It might be time to try Broderick Thomas in the last minute. Yeah.
It might be. It might be. But okay, so this is the other part of the Celtics story this year. Jayson Tatum and his struggles. And I think there are two Jayson Tatums that we've seen. We've seen the classic Jayson Tatum where it's 5 dribbles and a fadeaway. And there's new and improved Jayson Tatum where he's aggressive and he's attacking and he's drawing too and he's kicking, or he's at least getting to the rim. And even recently, even getting to the line.
Yeah.
But I was saying on yesterday's show, like at some point here, through all of the film study, the message has to get through at some point, right? Like what you've been doing historically, look at the film, it's not really working. Get to the rim. Like how many times have we've been, this is the same thing that we've said for years now. Get to the rim. Here's your proof. Here's the film. Get to the rim if you can, even if it's via pick or off the dribble. I know you've been talking about he doesn't run pick and roll much anymore or as much, but you got to get into the teeth of the defense and then make them react to you and then get the ball out. And then hopefully you can relocate and get the ball back. But that's how Jayson Tatum's going to get out of this.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And I think the ripple effects for that are just they're so significant, right? Like if Tatum starts doing that, then he starts like those kind of drive and kick passes that he was so good at last year. I mean, he's not throwing as many of them. He's throwing some, but that was a lot of where a lot of his assists were coming from last season, were those like driving kicks. And in the pick and roll, that's just such a natural motion for these guys, right? Like you drive the pick, the guy comes over, you kick to the guy that guy was guarding. That's it. Like it's very simple basketball. And I think simple basketball, I was talking about this on the Geno Time podcast, but I was, yeah, and you may not have heard of it.
I didn't hear that.
Yeah.
I didn't hear that over the bleep that I'm going to put in over that.
I was talking about this over on Geno Time is just, he's
Oh, I completely derailed your thought process.
You did. It's gone forever. But I mean, like,
he's driving the kicks. He's not driving and kicking like he used to.
Yeah. And I mean that, like, I don't know, that just hits so much of his offense. It improves so much of his offense. I think it just makes him more comfortable, and it simplifies things in a lot of ways. Where I think Jaylen Brown this season, I think he's played a very simple brand of basketball, and I think Tatum could take some notes from that. Where if he did simplify things, if he was trying to do a little bit less, like dancing in isolation and that kind of thing. And I don't mean that in like a negative way. Like, I mean, he's very talented at all these things, but like, if he just kind of made things a little easier on himself, right? Like these like sidestep layups, like the things that he did so well, where he's, these Euro steps and all that, he's really good at those things. And they're very simple. And if he just kind of, simplifies his game a little bit and tries to do a little bit less in terms of beating guys one-on-one, I just think that would, it just make life easier. Like you're Jayson Tatum, you can score 28 points a game and have life be easy for you. Like it's like, what a luxury. Like, why don't you do that instead of all the tough stuff?
Back to wrap up the show in just a minute. Going to finish off the Jayson Tatum conversation and why I think they should hire Kevin McHale. That's next. First, BetOnline is back and better than ever. A new web interface for the start of basketball season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. It's your number one spot for all the basketball action, plus football, not baseball anymore, NHL, boxing, UFC, your favorite Vegas casino games. Head on over to the new updated desktop or mobile website. Sign up today and get a 50% welcome bonus with the promo code Locked On. Use Locked On when you sign up, make your first deposit. They'll add 50% of whatever you deposit as a welcome bonus. So go to BetOnline. It is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. Please gamble responsibly. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Make your second listen every day. Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q, with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. They're on a heater right now, so you want to check them out. Check them out wherever podcasts exist. Let's get into the conclusion of the Jayson Tatum conversation now with Tom Westerholm. For Tatum, it's about creating at least some level of mystery. if the defense knows what you're going to do, they can stop it or challenge it. Like you go back to the Milwaukee Bucks game, didn't Shemi Ojale get a block on like
On a
of course
side
he
step,
did.
yeah.
Right, of course he did, because he
Yeah.
knew exactly what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And okay, so some guys, when you know exactly what's going to happen, you can't do anything about it. And even with Tatum, sometimes because he's so long and he has that high release, that's why he's developed that sidestep, and that he can get off most of the time. But generally speaking, that's still a difficult shot. And if you're not feeling it, then that's not going to fall quite as often. For Tatum, and it's not just you be aggressive so you can draw the defense. It's you be aggressive and you drive and you spend a certain amount of time driving and kicking so the defense doesn't know, is he going to pass in this situation or is he going to shoot in this situation? And that keeps them off balance. And that's when you can manipulate them. That's the whole thing. Why Luka can be so good. Why some of these guys who aren't Kevin Durant or LeBron James, who are just like on another planet athletically, they can manipulate defenses because you got to be like, is he going to pull up? Is he going to pass? I really don't know. And when you drive and you drive and kick two, 3 times, when they W, you move it, then you just set up a quick boom. Nope, I'm laying it in. Like you can set up those little things that you can go to later in the game. The best manipulators of the game think this whole game through and say, I'm hitting him with this move 3 times in the first quarter. So in the fourth quarter, when I hit him with that move again, he's expecting this, but I'm doing that. That's where Tatum, I think, needs to be when it comes to his own offense. Get somewhere, do things in the first quarter where you're passing and moving the ball, knowing that later you're going to get that ball again. And I know they're expecting. It's like boxing. I've thrown this right hook this many times. I'm just going to whoop and then go with that left, and boom, it's curtains with that uppercut. So Tatum is still, the beauty of this is he's still averaging 20-something points a game, and there's still so many improvements that he can make.
Yeah.
If he can make some of these improvements, and they're very easy to make in season, he can overcome this, and in December, January, February, all of a sudden start winning player of the week and maybe even a player of the month and start really like moving forward.
Yeah. Honestly, man, that's a really good point. I I don't have like much of a counter to it. I'm just like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, man. I'm curious what you think. Again, that's something that we talked about, but I'd be curious to hear what you think. Like, how much do you think the new rules are affecting him, just in terms of?
Totally.
I mean, like obviously it's affecting a lot of guys. It feels like that's a pretty significant thing for him as well.
So I will say that I do think that he has started to get more aggressive this season. He did have that stretch on that road trip where he really was ramping it up and it was working. My take on this is he is trying it, and he's doing it. And I haven't even looked at the film or the numbers to see if this is actually right, but this is what it feels like to me. He's doing it more often early, and it feels like he's thinking, okay, I'm finally doing this. Where are my calls? I'm not getting he's frustrated by the lack of calls. And so he's like, all right, I'm not doing this if I'm not getting the calls.
Right.
Because I'm getting hit and I'm missing and my numbers at the rim suck. And I looked at his splits. The 16 foot to the 3-point line is his favorite shot right now, and actually the one that he's hitting the most.
Yeah,
and I think that's problematic because he feels most comfortable now hitting that shot, which is, I joked about this on the podcast the other day. If you went to every opponent, if you went to the Atlanta Hawks and said, okay, here's a contract, we're going to make sure that Jayson Tatum only takes those 16 to 24 footers, and that's the only shot he's going to take. And Atlanta would be like, yes, sign me up. I'm absolutely going to sign up for that shot because it's the least efficient shot in the sport. So I think that he's trying to attack early. He gets frustrated by the way things are being called now, and he starts going back to old habits. So
yeah.
I definitely think that's part of it. And we sit here and we were like, you need to take more free throws. Well, no one's taking as many free throws as they used to in the league this year. So we do have to be somewhat fair in that regard. He took 7. Was it last night? He took 7.
Yeah.
And it was like, whoa, 7 free throws. I don't know. I haven't even looked. Have you looked? I don't know how many guys are taking 13, 14 free throws in the game this season.
I haven't looked, but I have to assume it's low. I mean,
it's very low.
It's a very different game. And I think that can't be ignored, right? I think it's possible that at least part of this is Tatum just like trying to figure out what this new game is like. And that's a hard thing for a guy who has spent, 3 years in the league already to this point, playing a certain type of way, knowing that certain things are going to work. And then all of a sudden they're not working. I mean, of course, like, why wouldn't you just kind of go back to the thing that you're comfortable with, which, to your point, is 16 to 23 footers. Like that's where his bread was buttered, high school into college, all of that. So, I mean, I think to really magnify matters, it's the fact that his 3-point shot isn't falling. I mean, how much of this is just fixed if his 3-pointer starts falling? It feels like most of it, right? Like it's just, he's a completely different player when that happens. So when you factor in those two things as well, the 3-point shot and just like the security of like, okay, if nothing else in my game is working, maybe I just go back to the one thing that I know does work. Again, it's not perfect, but at least you can kind of understand where he's coming from in that regard.
Yeah. I mean, he's shooting 31.5% from 3 this year, 2.5 makes, 8.1 attempts. So the highest attempts, lowest percentage. That's why his effective field goal percentage is down to 44.4 effective field goal percentage.
Oh man.
I mean,
even my dumb math brain knows that's bad.
That's not good at all. So yes, the 3-point shot, but I think he's kind of like inverting, like he's trying to get hot from 3 early. And normally you'd say get something going at the rim, and he's not even getting that going. Which let's just wrap this up by just shifting it to Ime Udoka and saying like, look, dude, I think he's doing a lot of things, well, as he's figuring things out. We still don't know. It's 14 games of his entire professional coaching career, so we have no frame of reference as to anything. So I can't say whether he's doing a good or bad job. I don't know what his job, his baseline is yet. We're still establishing that. But I think that maybe in his playbook here, you might want to start coming up with, like, dig up the old Daniel Tice, play to get Tatum to the rim. Like, do something where the early action is just geared towards what can we do to set some back screens for him, some cuts. Let's get Tatum. Let's figure out 2-3 plays at the beginning of the game where it's a little bit different than what we're doing. And I've seen like 3 or 4 plays that just went over and over and over again. Let's throw a new one in and say, okay, this is how we're going to get Jayson some attempts at the rim, and let's just go from there, and then let the game flow, and then hopefully he gets some easy ones. And then, then you hope that you can use that film to say, all right, Jayson, don't rely on the sidestep threes quite as much. I know you like them. Save those for like when you're feeling it. Step into a couple of threes. If you don't have a 3 that you can step into, just drive it or pass it and just wait to get it back. You're going to get plenty of shot attempts no matter what. Don't rely on those old tricks. I think that's what we call pressing. I think he's just like, I really like the step back. I know I can hit the step back, and it's like, ugh. And you can see him slumping sometimes after missed shots. Like, I think they just need to simplify some of the things that he's doing, and then let him get back to the old stuff that we know that the tough shots that he can make.
Yeah, definitely. And again, I mean, how much of Ime's job is just simplified if Tatum is making threes, right? Like, right. I think some of the things that Ime is doing that have gotten really heavily criticized with regard to Tatum, I mean, one, I agree with you completely. I want to see Tatum get into pick and roll way more. Like, I just think that's a simple way to make things happen. The Daniel Tice play that you're talking about was a variation of the pick and roll. It's a very reliable way to get Tatum buckets. But I do think, Udoka's been using like these post-ups and stuff that I know a lot of people really don't like with Tatum. But the thing with the post-ups is that he does get into the paint when those happen. And a lot of the Celtics' best offense is just when the ball touches the paint. So if the ball is touching the paint with your best player in the post, you can kind of see the vision there, right? But at the same time, I mean, just like the three-point shot needs to fall. Like the Celtics were, I assume, banking on Tatum shooting somewhere north of 38% on somewhere north of like 7 attempts per game. And like he hasn't. He's been shooting like, way worse than that. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but it's probably what, like
31.5%.
Yeah, like how many makes is that per game? Like
2.6.
Like I assume that's probably 3 or 4 3-pointers fewer than you were hoping Tatum was going to make like most games. That's 9 or somewhere between 9 and 12 points. That's a lot of points. So, I mean, I just think that Udoka's job as an offensive, coach, I thought it was interesting. He talked after the last game about how like the defense has come around. It kind of felt like what he was saying was, okay, we figured out the defensive stuff. Now we're going to focus on offense too, as we continue to develop the defense. I'm curious what that looks like. The defense in the beginning, it really felt like, there was too much switching happening, right? There was too much of like the big switching. It was too much. And then he dialed it back a little bit, and they really seem to have found a groove. So it's like, okay, Tatum's been posting up too much. And Tatum's been ISOing too much. And it's like, maybe now, okay, let's dial that back, implement some pick and rolls, implement some things, give these guys a chance to give Udoka a chance to build a coherent offense. I'm curious what that looks like over the next 15 games. Like you said, it's only been 14. So, it's pretty early to be evaluating Ime, but at the same time, it is a sample size. So the next sample size that I'm really curious about is the offense. If it picks up over the next 5 to 10 games, I'm curious to see how that looks.
Look, we'll leave it there, but I will just add this. No one in the NBA knows how to post up anymore. They need to, and this is coming from an old post player, man. I love post footwork. They need to hire Kevin McHale. Just throw a bunch of cash at Kevin McHale. Bring him into a few practices and just teach Tatum some footwork. Not even the up and unders or all that. Just how to feel the defender and how to react once you get the ball. Because if you feel him this way, you can do this. And you can just rip through and get to the middle. If you feel him another way, reverse pivot, face him up, and then make your little spin move, and you got moves to make. Like, just teach these guys a little bit. I think the post game, because of the way the defenses have evolved, is starting to come back. So somebody get Hakeem Olajuwon on the phone. Somebody get Kevin McHale on the phone and teach these guys some post footwork, just so they know, oh, I feel this. Boom, I'm going to make this move. And then you can pass off of that. It's a little thing that's been brewing in me. I just wanted to say it. I had to. That's it.
I think you're right.
I'll do it. I'll go coach.
This is just you pitching yourself. Come on.
This is me. I'll do it. You don't have to pay me that much more. Well, I mean, you still pay me, but like not as much as you give them. I mean, it's a discount.
We're journalists. We're all cheap. You can.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm not quite as cheap. I get a little. Never mind.
I'm pretty cheap.
All right.
If you guys want to hire me to teach footwork badly, I'll do it.
You'd just be out there bombing away, be like, Jayson, let's just step further away. Don't listen to Karalis.
Correct. I just be like, just make them, dude. That's all you got. Just gotta make them.
You're like, the problem is you're not shooting from 35 feet. You should just shoot from 35.
Yeah, because if you shoot one from 35, make it or miss it, the 26-footer is going to look a lot easier the next time you try it.
It's like using a weighted bat in the warm.
Exactly.
Yeah. This thing feels I can swing 2 of these.
Right. Shoot one left-handed and then try going right-handed again. You never know. Make it feel natural again.
All right, Tom. Always appreciate you coming on. Geno Time podcast and whatnot, but mostly Boston.com, whatever. You don't have to listen to the podcast. Only listen to me.
Yeah, that's all you should be doing.
Yeah. Thanks to Tom for hopping on, as always, my former coworker at masslive.com. And now we've gone our separate ways, but still a friend of mine and does a lot of great work. Check out his work at boston.com. Thank you for listening to the show. If you're new, please subscribe. It is a free daily Monday through Friday podcast. So new episodes dropping every day, wherever podcasts exist. Also on the YouTube page, really trying to grow that YouTube page out. So if you like watching the show on YouTube, subscribe there, get notified whenever a new show drops. That's the show. Really appreciate you sharing the podcast with your friends, with your family. Tell everybody that they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network.